What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 259 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. And today, we're going big. We're going to be talking about what big Amazon sellers do to scale their business, their systems, their processes. And joining us, we're very excited, is Ellie Lipshatz from Escala. We're going to call you Lippy. Everyone, that's what everyone calls you. So, Lippy, thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we are excited too. Where are you right now? Where are you located?
So I live in Tel Aviv, Israel. So it's about 8 p.m. where I'm at, and yeah, just winding down after a nice long day systemizing Amazon businesses.
Yeah, you would have to wind down a little bit after that, I would imagine. But yeah, well, thanks for staying late over there to talk with us. We're excited. I mean, systems and processes is probably where I could use a lot of help. That's probably one of my areas where I lack a little bit. So this would be a really fun conversation. But before you got into that, you had your own business. We want to talk about sort of your whole journey, how you got to where you are now. So why don't I turn it over to you? Give us a background on your journey in e-commerce.
Yeah, well, I can take it back sort of a bit further because I think the context is important. I grew up in Australia until I was 19, and then I moved to Israel, which was kind of like a lifelong dream. I had a lot of family here, and actually joined the military, which is compulsory around here. So men have to do 3 years. So back then it was 3 years, and I joined a combat unit, an elite combat unit, and sort of moved up from just like, finished training and then went to be a commander. And then from being a commander, went to be an officer. And the only reason I bring this up is because I just realized that I really loved the sort of systems and process that most people seem to hate. And the army is obviously very regimented, very sort of type A with the way they go about things. And that's something that I brought to e-commerce. So basically straight after I left the army, I was in the army for 4 years. I signed a bit longer to be an officer, and went to an Amazon business as kind of like an intern. And Yanni was my boss back then. And I came in and I was like, well, what can I do? How can I be useful? And the CEO was spending half of his day doing customer support. And customer support on Amazon, there's the SLAs, but it's not very hard work, right? 90% of the cases you could sort of answer with 5 canned responses, but it just wasn't systemized. I was like, okay, this is crazy. Let me do it. I did it. And, within 2 weeks, I was like, I can spend my time in better ways. So I put together a whole training program. I said, give me a week. I'll put together a training program, SOPs, and I can scale this and I can just delegate it. So I did that. And then brought on a team of 2 people in the Philippines. And within a month, it went from the half of a day of the CEO to me spending 1 or 2 hours a week on it. And they were like, wow, this is exciting. Let's do this for the whole business. So I went core function by core function and really learned what it is that's going on. It wasn't all as simple as customer support, but lo and behold, after a couple of weeks, we could really systemize it and build a team in the Philippines of really talented people, but obviously lower cost, and free up the key people in the team to focus on important things like launching new products, launching into new marketplaces, et cetera, things that really move the needle for the business. And that business was one of Thrasio's first acquisitions. It was the first acquisition outside of the US, actually, which was nice. I think in hindsight, there was a lot of money left on the table. If they'd have waited to the gold rush, it would have been a much more valuable business. But then we were talking about what do we want to do next, and we said, we want to solve this problem that is Amazon sellers hate it. It's it's the elephant in the room a lot of the time, that just nothing is organized, nothing is systemized, and they kind of just are still running the business as a side hustle, but it's developed into this multi-million-dollar thing with a big team, but it still has the organizational infrastructure of that side hustle. And we said, let's build a solution for these sellers who have so much potential to unlock. Let's help them unlock that potential through systems and process, the things that no one loves to talk about, but we're just going to, we're going to be the ones to dive deep into that and be the experts at that. And that's what Escala is. And it ties nicely into Multiply Me, which is the other business.
So I think this mindset of systems and creating SOPs is something that was new to me when I first got in the corporate world. I didn't realize, like, I had a boss who was like, make these systems. Like, what the hell's a system? And it's like, you got to make these things like processes. So like, if you were to leave, somebody can just take this SOP and do it all. But like, that was not my mind shift, or I didn't have a mind like that growing up. It seems like the military, was that where you were first introduced to this? Or have you always been like dissecting processes when you were growing up?
Yeah, I've never had sort of the understanding of like the philosophy of processes and systems. That's something that I really learned sort of in the army, but my room was always spotless as a kid, and like that's who I am. I really am an organized person. I like to sort of have things in order. I like to make sense of the world by, putting it into a linear fashion. And the truth is that like not everything fits into that. So I think that the beauty of systems is how can you integrate a system that makes you more efficient, but doesn't sort of stifle creativity. And that's where a lot of Amazon sellers get stuck, because they're like, I don't want systems because it's going to stifle creativity. And the idea is like, how do you actually build that system that it's just enough to make everyone efficient and sort of create visibility, and but not like that, we're just a bunch of robots and our next 5 product launches are all going to fail, and we're going to back and say, that's why.
So the system is fun. Like, I like the idea of doing this, like mentally, like inside my mind, having the system laid out. Like, okay, I do this step one, but putting it down on paper or recording it or making an SOP for it is like a pain. Like, I don't want to record it. I don't want to write it down. Is there like tools out there where you can like record what I'm doing and make it super seamlessly, so I don't have to write all this stuff down? I like the system part of it, but creating the system sucks.
Yeah, there's actually some cool tools out there. Some cool tech. One of them is called Scribe. It's like an add-on to your Google Chrome, and you just press it in the background, and then you just do what you're doing, and then you press off, and it summarizes everything you've done into like a pretty nice document that you can export as a PDF. You can edit it as well, because it's, a lot of the time, a lot of the steps are unnecessary. So the tech's not perfect, but there is good stuff there. I would say once you have a template for what SOPs look like in your business, it becomes a bit easier. When every SOP is inconsistent, and some of them are Loom videos, some of them are Google Sheets, some of them are, ClickUp workflows, that's when it's a pain to document them, because I think at the back of your mind, you're like, this is not going to be the long-term solution. This is just a short-term solution to how do I delegate this to my VA, for example. But once it like becomes part of a larger system, that's when it becomes a lot easier to actually document those processes.
When do you make a system? Like, how many times? I'm sure you're going to say after you do it twice, but when do you make a system for like a process or a procedure you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm going to give like an annoying answer to this. I think a lot of people in their head think, I do a process once, I do a process twice, I do it 3 times, I create an SOP. We like to take a more fundamental approach to building a business system, which is not that you only document an SOP once you've done it twice, but rather let's go and build like a high-level framework for how our entire business operates. And then we will color in the lines of we document those in process maps, and we will color those in with SOPs. So essentially, you want to build a baseline, and this is really what we promote in the Scala, is like as early as possible, build a baseline where everything in your business is systematized. And that would mean that it's documented all the way down. And then you just frequently update it. So don't wait until you do things like 2 or 3 times, and then you document it, and then you sort of document it again because you forget where you saved it. And then a year later, it's no longer relevant. Like, build a baseline where your business relies on systems, it runs on systems. And then from that point, you can sort of update and maintain it. It becomes a lot easier. So we recommend to a lot of people to go through something we call a systemization project. We do that for businesses. That's kind of like our core business model, but we also released a course that walks people through how to do that for themselves. And all of a sudden, just the light bulbs go off, because all of a sudden you're like, wow, I don't need to be doing this. I could delegate this. And then that sort of, just to answer the question you initially asked, which is when should you document an SOP? The answer is well, everything in your business, in my opinion, should be documented to a specific degree. And then it's always just about updating and maintaining it.
I missed a little bit of the beginning. My headphones were kind of going in and out of the sound. So I missed a little bit of what you're talking about as far as the acquisition with Thrasio, and you were a seller. Remind me again, what was your role as a seller? What was your, like, what were you doing as a seller? And then we'll talk about Thrasio after that.
So I think like it wasn't my business, just to be clear. I kind of like was running a lot of the Amazon operations, and I think my title became like head of Amazon operations. I saw my role as like, we had a couple of people in the business that were just geniuses at product sort of keyword research into Amazon. Yoni was, an expert marketer, and I saw my role as like free them up to be creative, and I'll take care with my team of everything that's like operational. And that's kind of where we got to in the end. And I think that, that's really what a lot of operational people like a COO should be thinking is, how do I free up the creative and brilliant people in the business to not have to focus in on the day-to-day?
Okay, good. So what were some of the things you had to systemize as part of as a business? Like when you came in, what were you attacking first?
So it was first customer support. I think you might have missed that. I really just focused on like, how do I free up the CEO from spending half his day on customer support, and then delegated that to a team in the Philippines. The next thing that I did was on the supply chain side. I think a lot of supply chain processes are extremely repetitive. So, but we essentially just had our head of, at the time he was head of operations, sort of just like spending a lot of his day doing things that were pretty routinary. And you can make your supply chain very rule-based very quickly. There's a lot of great information out there of, tried and tested supply chain methods of how to forecast, how to streamline your whole purchasing, and then like I could free him up to do things like negotiating with suppliers and doing like sourcing expeditions to try and find like the best types of products. So those were so we went to supply chain, and then I think after that it was, in our company it was called growth, like all of basically the listing creation, listing optimization. And there's obviously things in there that can't just be systemized, because some of it really requires creativity, but then there is a lot that can be systemized. So we tried to systematize as much as possible through creating SOPs, but then also the second step is like creating the SOP, but then building the team who can actually execute on that. And we just did that step by step until the entire business was pretty much systematized. And it's not all rainbows and butterflies. Like that's not, I don't want to like pretend that it was easy and anyone, you can just click your fingers and it happens. It's hard work. It's not always perfect. But I think that the most important thing to note was that within 6 months, the leaders of the business were really not focusing in on the day-to-day. They were focusing in on, how do we grow this business? What are the strategic steps that we need to focus on?
I'm going to dive a little deeper here. And I know you're trying to jump in, Dustin.
No, go for it.
Every time he answers, Lippy, every time you answer a question, I'm like, okay, well, what about this? So the customer service part, what were you like? What were you systemizing there? Like, is it like the constant, and how were you doing it with it? Like, was it like templates, or was it like outsourcing phone calls, or was it, automated response with chat on the website? Like, what was that customer service process like?
Yeah. So customer service there, it sort of, I'll talk about it in the Scala way. Back then it wasn't structured, but this is how I would do it today. We always talk about documenting from the top down. So customer service is, let's say, a core function of a business. Most Amazon private label businesses have like 5 or 6 core functions. So let's say customer service is the core function. Then inside of customer service, how are we going to break it up into the different processes? So inside of customer service, you might have, customer queries, replacements, refunds, just like, titles of different processes. Then each of those processes are going to have a process map. So let's say, okay, a customer requests a refund. What is the process for that? If you have someone in the Philippines who is new in your business, you might want there to be an approval process. Once they actually give the refund, what do they need to do from an accounting perspective? Do they need to log the refund anywhere? Are we categorizing the different, the different reasons why customers are requesting a refund? So, each sort of process has its sub process, which we call a combination of tasks and decisions. And then each of those tasks and decisions can be broken down into subtasks, and each of those subtasks has the working instructions, which is what most people call the SOPs. So we go from the top down. We call it the Scala process hierarchy. It's level 1 to 5, where level 1 is the core function, level 5 is the working instructions. And at any point you can zoom in, zoom out, see the forest from the trees or the trees from the forest.
I love it.
Justin, jump in here.
Well, I mean, this has got my brain kind of swirling.
Me too. It's like we just started talking, and now I went from like a creative mindset to now I'm like a process mindset now. Like,
yeah, I know. Yeah. And I'm thinking about, I do a lot of my customer service myself, and I'm thinking about how I do it. And it like all the templates and all the responses, like the SOP is in my brain. And it's like, that makes it really hard to systemize them. As you went through that, what you're talking about customer service. I'm like, okay, so what's the process for answering a question that comes in or an email that comes in through Amazon? I'm like, I just answer it. Okay, yes, I can refund that for you, or send me a picture, please, so I know that it's damaged or whatever. But as you went through that, I'm like, man, really, when you think about it, there's like 10 or 15 different things that happen inside customer service. And you really could create an SOP. And then you're talking about just, I didn't even think about it, don't do it. But even like chronicling, why are they getting a refund? That's very helpful. That's very helpful information. Is it,
and for like product research. So now like, okay, why are they getting a refund? Let me go back to my supplier. And now there's a whole SOP for supplier stuff. Like this whole thing, this is why like it's fun to talk about, but it is terrible to implement because you go down one rabbit hole, there's another, like it just keeps going.
Yeah. And in a Scala projects, like what always happens is we say, a Scala has a 3-phased approach. It's phase 1 is the assessment, phase 2 is the design, phase 3 is the integration. We always start by documenting the current state. And excitable Amazon sellers like you two are like, no, don't worry about the current state. We're going straight to the future state. And we're like, no, everyone relax. We need to understand what happens first, like what happens currently, so that we can, in an organized fashion, move towards what we want to happen. And that's where the magic happens of like, we want to create a process between our customer support and us and our factories, let's say, so that they can relay feedback. Or we want there to be, we want people to scan the reviews and then give that feedback to our product research and development team so that they can say like, what are customers feeling on a day-to-day basis? So I think that the most important thing is to get to that baseline, which is not a fun sort of exercise, but it's so important because once you're at that baseline, that's when the magic really happens. And you have a really structured whiteboard that already exists where you can say, what happens if we move this box here? Then what happens? Okay, what happens if I take this box that currently I'm doing and move it to a virtual assistant in the Philippines? How much of my time would be freed up? So getting to that baseline really allows you to like workshop. And then once you're workshopping, that's when you can really like go back into that creative mindset of how do I free myself up to do all these things, or how do I empower my team to do these things that are going to be super valuable?
Yeah. Chris and I've talked about this a lot before. I mean, both of us are similar in the way that we love like product research and finding new opportunities. And that's, and you can kind of tell the down and dirty, the operations part, that gets done as it's needed, but it's not the thing you want to be spending all your time on. And the thing that really caught my attention, you're talking about the CEO spending a lot of his time on customer service. And I was thinking about my normal day. Like I said, I do a lot of the customer service, and I'll be working on a project and then I'll get an email and I got to respond to it. And it's like, you think, oh, it was like a 2-minute distraction. Happens, occasionally in there, but it adds up, and it like you said, if you can process it. But a question for you I have is, as you started to implement these in the company, as these processes got more and more efficient, more streamlined, what was the impact on the growth, revenue, everything else in the organization?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It doesn't happen immediately. It's not like you've built the systems and all of a sudden your bottom line looks like 3 times better than it was before, because things in the e-commerce world take time, right? If you have a product idea, until that actually affects your bottom line, it could be 12 months. 12 months would be a great scenario. So it does take time. Unfortunately, I would say we sold for reasons that are sort of had nothing to do with the business, probably a bit too early to really realize all of those. But in terms of what we see with our clients, we check in with our clients 3 months later, 6 months later, 12 months later. And 12 months is about the time where they start to say, you know what, me being 50% more free with my time has had a really material impact on the business, because I've been able to do this. We've been able to launch in this marketplace. We've been able to launch 2x more product. You do start to see that actually correlate into financial results. I wish it could happen like that. I think what people do start to notice straight away is their time, but in order for them to actually monetize that additional time, it does take that takes a couple of months, almost a year. So, but just, you said something before that really resonated with me, like working for an hour with 2 5-minute distractions that come at different points within that hour is not the same as working for 50 minutes. Like a 5-minute distraction really sets you back. It's not just the 5 minutes. And I think that, small things like customer support, or, a small email that pops up that you just have to get to straight away, it's hard to actually quantify what the impact of that is, but it's really, really big. And a lot of the time when we talk about, building a system or even offshoring, it's not just about protecting your time, because you could probably say, you know what, customer support is not a full-time job, so I'm not going to bring someone on to do it until it's a full-time job. But it's not about protecting your time. It's about protecting your focus. And that is almost like your greatest asset, is that ability, that sort of flow state that is so hard to get to. But once you remove those distractions, you're able to get to it a bit more frequently. And that's like where, 1 hour of work can sometimes lead to like millions of dollars of bottom line, or in a great scenario.
And it probably opens up for more creativity. Like when you have all that stuff off your shoulders and you're not worried about it, it allows your mind to be a little bit more free spirit and like think other ways to grow. Probably takes the stress off your day to day. All that good stuff.
Yeah, I can see the importance, though. I mean, me personally, I probably have ADD. I've never been, it's like you can.
I think we all do. Somehow.
Yeah, I know. Somehow. I've never been diagnosed, but it's like I can. You were talking about the 5-minute interruptions not adding up to 50. It's got to be like it takes me down to like 30 minutes of work during that hour. You shift around. I've got multiple computers over here, and I'm like, something will ding over here, and I go to it. So my question though now is, we talk to a lot of people that have exited their businesses, sold to a lot of these aggregators that are out there, and processes. Okay, like all the SOPs. How much does that contribute positively to the exit, to the sale? From Thrasio's perspective, if you've got, I would imagine a worst case scenario for an aggregator is buying a business where one person was doing like all the work, and now they're buying it and they've got to replicate it. But having all these SOPs out there, and all the roles filled, or if they got to fill them, it's got to be more attractive to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because we work a lot on the aggregator side. We've got a bunch of aggregator clients, and we work with them on the actual brand integration once they buy once they buy a brand. And we'll see like how differently they view a brand when the brand is really systemized, because it just gives you that air of confidence as if you put yourself in the shoes of the head of M&A at an aggregator. If you come with sort of like a deal room that's so well prepared, and it's not only here are my financials, but here is how I do everything, and also here are my next 5 products that I'm planning on launching, that just gives that air of confidence that will impact the multiple in a way that is not always sort of objective, but actually subjective. And there's a lot of subjectivity that goes into these things. And that sort of, we see it on the side of the aggregators, that when they get a brand that is well systemized, they jump on it. They, because it sends a signal like this is a founder who really knows what they're doing. And if they have this level of attention to all the processes, then I'm sure that like their products are also great, and I'm sure that their vision is also great, and they treated their team well, and there's not going to be any problems that show up or any red flags once we buy the business. So it is really great. I'll share a pretty cool story. We worked with a brand and actually documented the systems of a brand, and they were doing amazingly, and then they got bought by a well-known aggregator in the space, and the aggregator bought them and saw their systems and was like, wow, we really need these, and reached out to us, and now that aggregator is like one of our largest clients. So that was a pretty cool story, where it's just like, just to sort of show the appreciation that the aggregators see on their side when they do buy a business like that. And I think it really does increase the irresistibility of a business.
What's the role? I think you mentioned it earlier. Is it project manager, or what was your role at the company?
I mean, we were sort of we were too small to have like official titles, but probably like head of Amazon operations, I guess.
Operations, that's what you mentioned.
Yeah.
So is that what somebody's looking for, an Amazon seller, when they get to a point where they have too many things on their plate? Are they looking for a head of operations kind of manager to take over their Amazon account?
Yeah, operations when it comes to like retail businesses is kind of weird, because the word operations I think sometimes means like supply chain. But yeah, so it's kind of like a head of process probably, or process if we're speaking to Americans. Yeah, I mean, I've seen like lots of different titles, but I think in most spheres, operations typically means, helping other people do the things they're meant to be doing and not get bogged down in things that they're not meant to be doing.
So you guys got this academy over at Escala. I'm saying that right, Escala.
Yeah. You
okay.
Got it.
Yeah, you guys had this academy over here. And what's this academy all about? What do you guys do over here?
Yeah, so I mean, the Escala engagement, which is kind of like, it's 6 months. It's like you're assigned a senior consultant and a junior consultant. They work really closely with you. They document all of your process maps, and that's like a really high touch point solution, and higher cost. I think it's still a super amazing value for money, but it's higher cost, and it's not always sort of affordable or accessible to every single Amazon seller out there. But I think the people who need these processes and systems the most are the ones who are starting out, or the ones who are struggling a bit. So we sort of set out on a mission to create a course that was affordable for all different types of Amazon sellers on how to sort of do this all yourself. And I'm the one who, I sat in front of a camera for 3 weeks. It was painful. But I'm really happy I did it, because, we're getting a lot of amazing feedback from all different types of sellers, but I would say specifically newer sellers who are in that first step of like, maybe they have a few team members here and there, but they don't have like a really well-structured team, and they're taking that step into, okay, I've stabilized a bit. What does my business look like in 3 years? How do I really make the most of this opportunity? So it doesn't tell you like how to do PPC research or how to, source products online, but it tells you how to do what you're already doing, just at scale, and as part of like a more sophisticated business system. And it takes, the biggest challenge was, how do we make this DIY? And I think that we really attacked that problem from lots of different angles. And I think it really is very doable by yourself. Like, we give you a lot of templates, and we sort of teach you how to give yourself feedback, and we show you what to look out for. So by the end of, implementing that course, you would have everything that you would have at the end of an Escala engagement, but obviously just for a much lower cost.
And you mentioned you provide some SOPs to kind of like, for maybe we're missing something that we don't have in our business, we can kind of just plug and play it with our own business. Is that right?
No, so we don't actually provide the SOPs. It's more about, I mean, there are a lot of examples in there so that you can see what an SOP should look like, for example, or what a process map should look like. But the point of the course is to teach you the system. Let me get this. I don't know if you've ever read these books. I just created some content online, so I'll say the same thing here. Have you ever read
Atomic
both of these
Habits?
books?
I've got.
Yeah, I've read both of those.
Right. So it's kind of like a metaphor that Atomic Habits doesn't talk to you about what habits you should have. It's more about the system of implementing habits. Whereas 7 Habits for Highly Effective People is like 7 amazing habits that you can actually implement tomorrow. So I'm not sort of saying one's better than the other. Like this is, amazing. And there's a lot of amazing like courses out there for how to do PPC campaigns and how to, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's like this information exists in spades. This information of like, I keep on stuffing up the reflection, how to actually like implement the systems into your own business and how to do this yourself at scale, that information doesn't really exist. So that's what we focused on with the Escala course.
Got it.
What's the process for revisiting your SOPs and your processes, and how do you know when it's time to make an adjustment or a change to what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a really important question, because Amazon, like if you look at Amazon from 2020, it's like nothing is relevant. Everything is against TOS. It'll get you kicked off pretty quickly. So you do have to be maintaining these. What we say is like every time there's a material change, you should update it. But we have a forcing function in there where every 3 months, the process manager reviews every SOP. Again, it depends on the size of your team. If it's a 1-person team, that's not feasible to revisit it every 3 months. So you might want to push that out to 6 months. But if you've got a slightly larger team and you're able to sort of divide ownership of those SOPs, then we like to say every 3 months, such as the pace of Amazon's evolutions all the time.
So you've also created another thing, I guess they kind of go hand in hand, Multiply Me. I was introduced to this, buddy of ours introduced this, but I've never heard of it. Paul Barron over Chad, so he talked about it, and I was like, what does Multiply Me? I was always using Upwork or Fiverr. Tell us what's Multiply Me, how does that come into this?
Yeah, so Multiply Me is it's sort of like high level offshore talent. So everyone loves to use the word VA. We personally are trying to like get rid of the word VA, because it's kind of just like, I'm bringing in this general assistant from overseas, and there's really amazing talent in the Philippines. So our mission is to bring that unbelievable talent, not the generalist talent that you can find on like online jobs or Upwork. And I'm sure that there are superstars out there, but as a general rule, it's pretty low level. And we've got a team of like headhunters who will, based on whatever role you're looking for, will go out and actually look for that specific role. And endorse you 3 high-level candidates, and you can interview them, you can test them. So it's really like helping you build a strong high-level Filipino team. And then we can also help you with the onboarding, and it taps into a lot of Escala systems with our onboarding, in terms of like, we're helping you build them really intelligent KPIs. We're making sure you've got a really robust onboarding program. So it's essentially giving you all the tools you need to build a really strong team in the Philippines. It's definitely not as cheap as going to online jobs, but you're obviously still enjoying those massive cost savings of working with the Philippines, but just at a really, really high level with much higher retention rates, much higher quality of talent. And
is the talent that you guys have pulled together, are they familiar with a Scala? And if I wanted to get like a product manager, I'd say, hey, look, I need a product manager, Multiply Me, go get me one, and then just plug them into kind of like the Escala Academy.
That's a really good idea. So we're actually considering like bundling deals where if you work with someone from Multiply Me, you can get access to the course, and also for your multiply, we call them multipliers. We haven't implemented it yet, but if anyone wants to explore that with us, we're definitely open to it. I think it's a great idea.
Well, if they
like
do
an SOP, I need to write down. Like,
they go so hand in hand. I mean, I've had lots of great people from the Philippines work with me, but a lot of times, like you're talking about, it takes a while to learn how to onboard somebody. It takes a while to, a lot of times up front there could be some wasted time back and forth, and maybe they don't feel like they even have enough work to do because you don't have these processes where they can just go. A lot of people are just hoping they go in there and figure it out, whatever they need to do. But that is there's a huge correlation between bringing on great talent and then also making sure they're set up for success as well with the right processes. So
yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that people are very, very quick to sort of just overlook onboarding. They say, I found the right talent. And given that they're the right talent, they should be able to figure it out. And I would say that doesn't work anywhere in the world, but it's especially unlikely to work in the Philippines just because sort of that comfortability to push back is not there at the start. You really need to develop that trust first. So if someone's not sort of understanding something, they're less likely to come to you. And these are all the things that our onboarding specialists sort of help with like, bridging that cultural gap. And I think people eventually figure it out, but they make some mistakes up front. And sometimes when they make those mistakes, they sort of just rule out the entire nation of the Philippines of 100 million people. And that's kind of a shame. So yeah, it's definitely onboarding is such a crucial aspect. No matter how good the talent is, just dropping someone in and saying work it out is very, very rarely going to work.
What's an area, or where's an area that you see larger sellers, medium-sized sellers that they're hiring for? Back in the day, there really wasn't a need for, well, maybe there was, but you didn't hire like a social media manager. You didn't have time. You were looking for like a sourcing manager. What is that on the talent side? Where are you seeing people add to their team?
So I think what you're looking for are processes that are extremely repetitive, processes that don't require necessarily a high level of sort of prerequisite skills, so that the skills are extremely coachable. And probably high level sellers are also thinking, what are the things that are extremely time consuming? I'm not going to bring someone in for a process that takes me an hour a month, but I'm going to bring someone in for a process that takes me an hour a day. So, larger sellers are really looking to, I would say a lot of their supply chain is actually sort of handled by their offshore team. A lot of aggregators are hiring business analysts with us to sort of help with the M&A function. The entire marketing function, I would say, is extremely coachable. So, there are specific aspects that maybe aren't, but, like PPC campaign optimization is very rule-based. Listing optimization, you can also make that very rule-based. So once you have sort of the system and you're able to map out the system, bringing in an offshore team to succeed in that becomes a lot more feasible. And, we have, I would say, 20% of the aggregators working with us who are building large teams in the Philippines and are just seeing wild success.
Lippy, I know you've given me a lot of food for thought, for sure, in terms of this. Kind of opened my eyes to a little bit more about really robust processes to help grow, to help scale. And I know a lot of people listening are having the same experience. Their eyes are open to this. Anybody who's interested in the course, working with you, Multiply Me, what do they need to do to get in contact or start the conversation about working together?
Yeah, so I'm super approachable, I guess. On LinkedIn is probably my platform of choice. If you just want to connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me a message, I'd be more than happy to jump on a call. The course, you don't need to speak to me to get the course. I mean, you're welcome to, but the course is at course.weareascala.com. And that is, I don't like doing sort of this promotional stuff, but that is at $1,500 US just for the next week. It's at its launch price. We've had it there for about 3 weeks and we're going into that final week, and then it's going to go up to 3,000. So if you are interested, I would recommend getting in now because it just won't ever be cheaper. And yeah, I would love to talk to anyone who's listening and is inspired by these topics.
Well, we will definitely have all the links to the websites. We've got them scrolling at the bottom right now. We'll also have them in all the show notes and all over social media, so everyone can go check you out. Hit him up on LinkedIn. Like you said, jump on the call with him. But Lippy, we really appreciate you joining us today. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been awesome, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
You got it. Well, thanks for doing it, Lippy, and thanks everyone for tuning in today. We will definitely be back at this again real soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.